Hey guys and girls, just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Buzzsprout. Start a podcast today with free podcast hosting for Buzzsprout, easy podcasting software for hosting, promoting, and tracking your podcast. Buzzsprout is the best way to publish a podcast online for secure and reliable hosting to full iTunes support. Get started for free, no credit card required, cancel at any time.
Stats for losers.
That's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is.
You play to win the game.
Welcome to the Airin podcast. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Airing It Out podcast. I am your host, as always, Dustin Marion. I am blessed and honored to have Harrison Glaser back on the show from the Take Flight Media, his new website that he just started. He's ready to go. He's all fired up. What's going on, Harrison?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be here. Had fun last time. Always love to talk about my Jets, no matter what's going on with them. So happy to be here.
I'm glad. So we kind of put some stuff together here, and I think that I feel like there's a few leads to not bury, but one of the first one is, I think, obviously what everybody on Twitter, everyone from the Jets community is thinking about is, when do we fire Gase? And if he is not fired, or a better way to say it is, if he wins this weekend, does that save his job for maybe a few more games?
I think that's a great question. And if you may, I actually wrote an article today on my site, which, if you don't mind, I'll shamelessly give myself a plug.
Let's go.
TakeFlightMedia.org. Would love for you guys to come by, read what I have to write. But yeah, these first couple of sentences or so, I figured summed it up perfectly. So as much as I did not want Adam Gase from the day the Johnsons hired him, I never would have expected it to be this bad, let alone in his second season when you expect the chemistry to be better, not worse. The Jets in just 2 weeks have become the laughing stock of the NFL, but us fans are the only ones not laughing at it. It looks like yet again, due to incompetency and dysfunction, the Jets will be looking for a new coach in 2021. Now, if I were the Johnsons or Joe Douglas, I would strongly consider firing Adam Gase right now before season's end. I could give you a ton of numbers and stats as to why. We've heard them all. If you want a good one, actually, check out Greenberg. ESPN has the video. He just rips into Adam Gase. Talks about the brilliant offensive mind he is, and then how every stat he has is literally the worst, which is what we've been watching right now. I would say, injuries or not, there's a certain level of play you expect in the NFL, and we clearly have not seen that. That being said, firing Gase Adam right now sends the message to the league that management isn't just blindly following a failure. It also sends the message to fans that you care as much as you do and they do, and you want them to get behind you again.
So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that I read one of your articles about the ownership, mishandling this. I thought from the moment this guy took the microphone and had one of the most wacky and zany intros. I mean, you're supposed to be super professional. You're supposed to be showing us. I mean, it's interesting, right? We go from Rex Ryan, and I think Rex Ryan was handsome on the mic in the sense of he knew what to say. He knew how to say it. He knew how to handle probably one of the toughest medias on the planet, because you got to deal with the Daily News and you got to deal with the New York Post, and those guys, Rich Cremini and all these guys, they know their stuff, and they're going to be on you every day, every moment, every second. And even if they lost, I thought he was brilliant. He was brilliant the way he handled it. When we go to this guy, that presser was a joke. I was almost afraid. I was like, we hired this dude? I mean, how many GIFs and memes didn't come out of that presser of his eyes exploding and all of these things he was saying? I couldn't believe that we went with this. I think when we had you on the show last time, we kind of talked about this a little bit. I think an average person or a decent fan of the Jets had a gut feeling that this wasn't going to be a smart play.
I couldn't agree more. When Adam Gase was first hired, like I was saying before, when I read, I didn't like the hiring at all. I wasn't a fan of it. I felt like he wasn't successful in Miami. He took a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill, which many point out now. He was great before Adam Gase got there, throwing over 4,000 yards a season, solid quarterback. He had the injury, but if you look at the year before and after that, he was so bad, he literally considered retiring. Then you take him, Arthur Smith gets his hands on him, and now he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's literally, he escaped the dysfunction. And you said it before, you see it in the media with the presses. I tweeted it the other day with Darnold. He was talking about, how he felt about the game, but you could just see it in his body language and the way he was. He's upset, and they all are. They just, it's a difficult situation, and you don't know what to do unless you're in the high enough chain of command to make something happen. And I think the obvious statement now is to make that happen.
To bury ownership a little bit more, whether it's draft picks that we whiff on as a front management, whether it's coaches that we miss or we don't get properly, I just really don't understand. Like, this guy had Peyton Manning. You didn't coach anything to Peyton Manning. Like, Peyton Manning, literally you have a coach, an offensive guy, and a player all packaged in one. So you parlay that into going to the Dolphins, and like you said, Ryan Tannehill was pretty much there. I mean, to be a converted wide receiver to quarterback, I'm sure you had to learn a lot of things. Those are two different positions, but I'm sure him playing wide receiver probably helped him make the adjustment better to quarterback, understanding breaks and routes and all these things. Now you bring him to Sam. To me, I mean, we talked about it in the offseason. You gave him a ton of weapons. You gave him pretty much, they gave him more than I don't know, 40, 50, $60 million bankroll to go blow on guys. We got arguably some of the best offensive linemen, one or two. We get Bell. We get a whole bunch of receivers. I mean, I think Crowder was a great investment. He's probably the only glue left on that offense that actually helps us, move the ball downfield. But everything else to me doesn't check the boxes with him. And, the fact that I think I read it in one of your articles, Douglas was happy to get with him. I just don't see this gelling, especially for the rest of the season. This is going to get worse before it gets any better.
No, I completely agree. You couldn't have said it any better. That's literally the problem we're having right now. And you see it with Douglas. People were saying, based on what you were saying before, that Douglas wanted to work with Adam Gase. He came into a situation where the management basically made Gase the unquestioned king of the Jets. He was the temporary GM, the coach of the team. What was he going to do? Come in and say, I hate this guy. It's not going to work. So the message is on the board. I feel like you mentioned it before with the management. One of my favorite articles I'd written, a big thing about, ironic irony, because I'm, a social studies teacher. You look at trickle-down economics. I call it trickle-down dysfunction because everything comes from the top. And like you said before, we've had Douglas is the first one, but we've had all these incompetent GMs that make bad decisions. They whip in the draft, then they hope to hit it big in free agency, which we know never works. You have to build through the draft. And it's year after year, bad coaches, bad decisions, and we hate it. We have the saying SOJ, same old Jet. But you have to trace it all back to one central cause, and there is only one constant, and that's the person that's owned the team. We had a couple of functional years in the beginning when they owned it in 2000 with Testaverde, with Pennington, but everything after that, you said it before, it's been a freaking dumpster fire. So I do think even though we can't make them sell the team, I think it's important that we make our voices heard.
I agree 100%. We're buying the jerseys. We're buying the tickets. I mean, right now with COVID, that's not 100% true. But prior to that, we're selling, the concessions and all that stuff. And Jet Nation is big, man. And we got to make these guys at least, remove the people that are not making the team better. Speaking about removing people and making the team better, I seen as well. I'm going to be plugging you this whole show. I seen also we potentially had the list of guys that are on our team already that who could take over. Now, I seen you poo-poo a little bit, Mr. Williams. I kind of liked him. I thought he was good as a Brown. I think as a bridge gap, he's not going to be the overall guy. I think the most competent with the most experience, he's the answer. I've seen people talk about Hines Ward potentially be somebody, but yeah, I think somebody challenged you on Twitter saying that, well, the receiving core is a fucking joke, and so now he might not be the guy. I just think with Williams, we should be a defensive team. That's always been pretty much what we've been known for. We've had a tons of pro bowlers in that vein. I don't know if we have the guys to make it there, but I think having a defensive guy might help that situation. How do you feel?
Well, I think you nailed it on the head a second ago when you mentioned the Hines Ward situation. I brought that up as an interesting dark horse, and I covered that in the article I wrote, just, as a fan favorite, because you watch the guy play. He was a legend. He was one of my favorite players. He was like the Wayne Corbett of the Steelers, but better, because he was hands down. Even Roethlisberger said it when he retired that He was, I felt, the best receiver anyone's ever played with. He just had this innate way to get open, and he knew, like, innately when Roethlisberger was in trouble and it was time to break down and do something different. He's just incredibly smart, and I remember guys love to play with him. And I just feel like when you bring in an interim guy, which you mentioned before with Williams, I feel like here's the interesting thing that people don't look at. Everyone gives him credit for this, but you have to think of it like this. Everything in the NFL is preparation, looking at the footage, looking at the film. Whenever a team gets an interim coach, they always tend to do better. And it's just because it's a mix-up. It's because teams for the whole season have been reviewing, this is what they do, this is how they plan, this is how they do that. And then all of a sudden, you flip the script, and now they have a week or two to make those adjustments and decisions. So I feel like that's not a fair way of looking at it. My thing with Williams, I would say, is he had his stint as a head coach where he was awful with Buffalo. That was 20 years ago. Why has he not been a head coach since? Do you think he's just been overlooked for 20 years? I personally aren't a fan of him. And then when you sprinkle in the Bounty Gate, which just, I feel like him and Peyton should never coach again, in my opinion, I just want him gone. And you mentioned before the thing with Gase and cleaning house. People are talking about Jim Bob Cooter as a possible replacement. But you forget one thing. Every coach, the way they learn, let's say it's offense, they learn from the guy that they were an assistant for. That's always how it is. That's always how it was. As Belichick learned from Parcells. Who was Cooter the assistant under? He was the assistant under Gase back in 2013, prior to when he was with the Lions. So even though he had success with the Lions, if you want to clean house and get rid of all the Gase, you got to get rid of Logan's and you got to get rid of Cooter. That's why the other time you mentioned Frank Pollock and Sean Jefferson are my two big guys. I don't want to go too on about them, but again, if you check my site, takeflightmedia.org, I wrote about them. They are hands down the best people. They have the best experience and the most success. I'd love to see them in that position. And if you get rid of Williams, my surprise would be to put Andre Carter, the defensive line coach, in as the defensive coordinator. Because even if you take out this season, the last couple of years, the D-line has always been the staple of the Jets team, and they've had success.
That's interesting. I wanted to say before we move on from this topic, because I know you're a smart guy, who would you want that's not on the Jets to coach this team? That's out there that might be available.
What's really interesting and I like about that is when I floated the Hines Ward situation, I guess I didn't pose it as a dark horse, so a lot of people brought in their ideas, and I got to hear what a lot of people had to think and converse with them. One of the big names was Arthur Smith, the guy that's with the Titans. And I think about it, and I think the Tannehill situation, he was great before he got there. He was a good quarterback. And look at fantasy, it's a perfect example. Before Gase got there, Ryan Tannehill was a top fantasy quarterback. Hands down, he was a great lock. Gase gets there, his fantasy status disappears. He had the injury year, but other than that, it was horrible. Now with the Titans, he's top again. So I'm wondering if the same thing could happen with Darnold, is what I wonder. Because you want a good stat, Bill. In 2018, Sam Darnold had 532 yards in his first 2 games of the season, which isn't great, but it's okay. In 2019, he had 513, going down. But then this year, he only had 394 yards in the first 2 games of the season. I know we talk about injuries, and this guy's hurt, that guy's hurt, but look at the whole NFL. Everybody's hurt. It's a COVID year right now. And you see all the time other guys stepping up because it comes down to the coaching. The scheme is there. They know what they're doing. They're ready to step in. Like, perfect example, the year with Brady when he got hurt, when Matt Castle came in. He was phenomenal. He was amazing. Then he went somewhere else and he wasn't. If you have a good system, people can be plugged in. And this is not a good system.
Yeah, I agree. That's what it started to make me question. I didn't want to put too much of this like in a particular order, but now that we're already talking about that, so I watched the bridge version. I mean, because I didn't want to watch the whole 3 hours of this game. It was so bad. It made me sad. Yeah, it was brutal. I seen overall the first 2 hours, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But with Donald specifically and some of these other guys, there's a lot of other first year, second year, even third year guys that are coming into fruition with less. Can this all be on Gase and how they're calling the plays?
I think I mentioned it before with Tannehill. That's a perfect example. We have seen Sam Darnold in the past couple of years. Just go back to 2018 and 19 alone. They were saying how great he looked. We forget about that because, the rose-colored glasses. We're seeing what we see right now. But in 2018, they were saying he was the greatest rookie they've ever seen, making decisions, adjustments, reads on plays that normally wouldn't be made at that age. 2019, he was decently solid. He's not progressing up because we're putting him in a bad situation. I mentioned before with the yards. And that's the biggest thing that bothers me the most. We've totally ruined this kid because you don't realize Johnson's the trickling down of that dysfunction. He started out with Bowles. When he came in with Gase, he had a whole new system, which is, he's a smart kid, but it's a whole new system, whole new plays, whole new way of doing things. Most of the time, quarterbacks don't thrive in that first year in a new system. So, okay, now we're going to get rid of Gase. That means next year in his contract year, his fourth year, he's going to have a new coach and a new playbook that he's never seen before. We expect him to be great. And if he isn't, how do we justify giving him big money? Because that's what he deserves. So I would love, and I think most of the fans seeing it from that perspective, we want to apologize to Sam Darnold because it's so unfair. And I don't want to lose him. People talk about the possibility of losing him. I just don't want to think about it. I have my Sam Darnold jersey. I love the kid. But it's because Sam Darnold hasn't failed us. It's because the team has failed Sam Darnold. And it's the biggest shame. I can't even say enough because I'll just get so upset.
So I just had on Josh Booty, former LSU quarterback, former NFL quarterback, and we talked about this specifically about cohesion from head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback, and how this is all put together and how much you have to play to their strengths and maybe make things simpler. I don't want to say easier, but simpler so that progression could go up higher. Someone that he brought into the argument was the way the Arizona Cardinals are handling Kyler Murray. I could say Baker Mayfield, who I've been trying to throw under the bus, but Baker on that Thursday night game, I know it was Cincy, and Cincy is not known for anything special as of lately, but he dazzled. Now, granted, with Beckham and with Landry, there's more. I mean, if we had a Beckham-style player and we had a decent running game, I think that is what it really comes down to. I think, number one, not only is it sad that we haven't given him the right people, we also haven't given him the tools. And I think if you don't have a running game, it stops a lot of other things. It doesn't create play action. It doesn't keep the defense on you. Now these guys can pin their ears back and pretty much come after you every play. And when you look at the Buffalo Bills, who are going to be playing twice, and when you look at the New England Patriots, these are pretty strong defenses who like to rush the quarterback. And if he has nothing there, I mean, I was watching Frank Gore. I love Frank Gore. Frank Gore is great, but it didn't look like the offensive line was getting the push that they needed up front. I mean, there was a couple of plays on 3rd and 2 or 3rd and short or 2nd and short that they just couldn't convert. And that puts, in my opinion, the quarterback in a very difficult position. When we saw last Thursday night, look at what Nick Chubb did for the Cleveland Browns because they were getting so much pressure in the gut. When he did that rollout to the backside, the whole entire team went to the right. And so now you get some of those mismatches where, you can get a Perryman open downfield. You can get a Crowder maybe on a comeback route, and it does more. But when you don't have the running game, and I mean, we got a rookie at running back, we got a grandfather at running back. And then, my next thing, I know I'm giving a lot, but the next question I want to get into is Bell overrated? Because not having a running back or personnel at running back, I think is really also hurting Sam Darnold's growth.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to Le'Veon Bell because you mentioned the talent of the team. That is the big Achilles heel right now. We all see it. The problem is Douglas is doing as much as he can, but he's only been there a year. He didn't even get the draft last year. Last year, McCagney did the draft. So he can only do so much. The old famous saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. There was not a lot of free agent wide receiver talent out there. I admit you should have re-signed Robbie Anderson. The problem is Robbie wanted big money to stay with the Jets around 10, 11 a year, and it was hard to justify at the time.
Did he get that money in Carolina? Right? No, I don't think so.
I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not 100%.
I don't think he did. That's interesting.
I think he got around like the 7 to 9 range, give or take. But I think it was just a change of scenery, maybe possibly. But we thought Rashad Perriman was going to be the guy. The problem with Rashad Perriman is for 4 years of his career, he was a bust. He was a nobody. He was a journeyman around the league. He looked lost and confused forever. Then he finally got it at the end of last year. He had over 500 yards, 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games alone. we're excited about that, but he can't stay on the field, and because he's out for a couple of weeks now. And when he is on the field, he didn't look at the only guy the Jets have right now is Chris Hogan. And Chris Hogan, even when Crowder comes back, they can't do it themselves. I again talked about my website before. First article I ever wrote, it's on there, was why the Jets should trade for Allen Robinson. And it just makes so much sense, especially when you have 2 first rounders 2 years in a row, 4 first round picks. That means they could theoretically trade a second rounder, which is more than anyone's going to offer for him, or a second and a third, second and a fourth, whatever. You still have those first rounders. Now you have a top guy. And like you said, the talent's not there. Darnold's just been set up for complete failure. But you mentioned Le'Veon Bell before. If I can talk about Le'Veon Bell, I think Damian Woody said it the best. If you listen on, again, Green ESPN, Woody just went on a tirade, angry as hell, throwing his hands up about this offensive genius, offensive guru. He literally said he's turned Le'Veon Bell into a scrub. And you know what? He's 100% right. If you look at Le'Veon Bell prior to when he was sitting out, he was a legend. The guy had more rushing yards than anybody. He was the best receiving back in the league. He sat out a year. Okay, last year maybe was a wash, but this year in the offseason, we were talking about this on the last podcast I was on with you, he's in the best shape of his life. And that offensive line is finally solid. I would say they were good. For the first time, I wrote another article about that the line is finally not the problem. The offensive line is good. So, yeah, he's out, but when he was in, it's the play calling, man. It's Adam Gase. It's got to be. The question is, any kind of coach, is he the kind of guy that's going to pigeonhole somebody into a certain situation that he thinks is best, regardless of their talent, regardless of their strength? Or is he the kind of guy that's going to adjust mid-game, work players to their strengths? He's not. And that's the problem. We see it. I mean, like what he said, he's turned Le'Veon Bell into a scrub. And that's just perfect. That's it.
So I looked it up real quick. I guess Robbie got the money he wanted. I think the first in that first year contract, he got $12 million. He got $20 million to go to Carolina. I wouldn't go that far. I don't know if he's amazing. I think he stretches. I think he stretches the field. I just don't think he has the body to put on bodies when it has to be physical. You know what I mean? He's a smaller receiver. And that comes in the same vein. It seems like some of these, I mean, the Jets seem to like small guys in the same vein of, you know, the Quebecs and now in the Crowders. But I thought he had great vision downfield and tracking the ball. I just, you know, he's not an Allen Robinson, big physical guy, jumps out the building, is going to fight for every down kind of situation. I found it interesting. I started to think about this. I said, okay, first of all, let me start with this. I love Le'Veon Bell. I said it when I had the guys on. I would love to name my son Le'Veon. I've never heard that name before. It was great. I love the number 26. Love everything about this guy. But I'm starting to think if he is a little overrated, because the Steelers, how many running backs they pump out? Who the hell is John Connor? Who's are some of these guys they have? I mean, besides Jerome Bettis, who is like this, you know, world-known guy, I just think that their system, speaking of systems, is really good. And their blocking scheme is fantastic. I just don't know if Le'Veon Bell, especially in a dumpster fire like the Jets, is going to elevate his style of game. I have a lot of question marks, plus the fact that he hasn't stayed healthy. And with another thing on Robinson, what I found interesting is that I think in a 4-year span, he's already been injured 2 years. I'm hyped about getting him, but it just seems like that injury bug, if you had it before, it follows you to the Jets. I mean, now this is the second year in a row that Le'Veon is injured. I just, I don't know. We got to try to find guys that have less time on the injury report.
I mean, this year, I would chalk it up to, I've spoken to a lot of guys on Twitter about this. A lot of people saw it coming, and I saw it coming too. I mean, there's no preseason. It's a crazy year. Everybody, all around the league, everyone's getting hurt. You see top fantasy guys, Christian McCaffrey, a guy you would never expect to get hurt.
Barkley.
Devontae Adams. Barkley, Devontae Adams, the guy that everyone else gets hurt around him, and he's always healthy. So it's a tough year. I feel like you can't knock that on anybody right now. But I don't think he's overrated. I mean, when I watch him play, it's there. The sparks are there. Those crazy catches he makes, the cuts he makes. I feel like now that there's a line in place, there just needs to be solid coaching. And again, I mentioned it with the interim. There's a lot of guys I like in Pollock, Jefferson. And again, if anything, changing it up. Everyone's been preparing for the Gase system. You change it up, it'll work. Even if it's for a couple of weeks, it'll work.
Yeah. I'm with you. I listen. You guys all had me hyped in the little bit of off season that we had. Harrison Glaser had me pumped. I don't know. It was always that same old Jets thing, like you were saying for me, because I just had a feeling, man. It's this. It's just. I mean, listen. From a sports fan's perspective, I've had enough heart attacks in my lifetime. I'm good that they're bad because it just allows me to drink and enjoy my time. But so now, let's say, actually, let me start with this. How many games do the Jets win?
And that's, I remember, we talked about that last podcast too. Their schedule is just unmerited. Schedules are supposed to go by past season production. They're playing tons of teams that are top defenses, top offenses, Super Bowl caliber teams. Even if the Jets were middle ground, they'd be screwed this year. So the fact that they're bottom of the barrel, oh man, I predicted 6 to 9 in the past. I mean, crap, I'm going all the way down to 2 to 6. I mean, I hate to say it, but unless, again, things change. And I said that before with, again, changing it up, cleaning house of anyone that's got any connection to Gase whatsoever, getting rid of Williams, changing offense and defense up completely, new names. I feel like the season is salvageable, but now you can't wait to, week 10 or 11 or 12, and that's when they decide to fire Gase. Because by then it's too late. If you've made the decision, make the decision. And people said before, I bet Douglas is itching at it. But the Johnsons, man, they've been micromanaging everything for 20 years. They say Douglas has keys to the car, but you don't think they're sitting in the back talking in his ear 24/7. It's ridiculous.
That sucks. That means that he's not the GM. If you don't have, I thought a sign of that was you let somebody basically shop for the groceries, right? And then someone else cook them. Because to not give Douglas, why would you fire the GM after he already spent the big cap money, after he drafted all the guys, after he signs all the free agents? I think that's unfair. You're going to come into a season and you're going to have to answer for all of this mayhem, and you didn't really pick anybody. You didn't pick the head coach, but you were happy to work with him. You're not going to say anything bad about the players, right? You're not going to say anything about the guys you drafted. You're going to go with it, right? But again, so now, let's say I'm going to go I don't know. I'll try to be nice. I'll go 4 to 6. I'll say I think they got more than 2 wins in them. They're gonna win a game that nobody expects. I don't think they're gonna beat Indy this weekend, right? They play Indianapolis this weekend, correct? In Indy?
They do. And yeah, Phillip Rivers is
He just smoked the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, and I believe this game is in Indy. Which again is
which is even worse.
Right.
Yeah, that's even worse. That's it.
Not good.
It's over. Yeah.
So that puts us at 0-3. That to me, you have to fire Gase after that game, right? Now, if you fire Gase, whoever you decide to go with, I think if you fire Gase, they'll probably give the position coaches and some of the other coaches maybe to the end of the year, because I don't think you could just fire everybody. You got to have some consistency on that. So now you're Joe Douglas. Let's say for crazy, we'll go with your dark horse, and we'll go with my crazy guy. So whether it's Williams or Ward, I like that they're both W's. If you go with these two guys, you're gonna say, okay, Hines, I think, understands the concept of defense. He played on probably one of the greatest franchises in NFL history, in my opinion. And I think Williams has been around the block. Do they need to start looking? And I know this is gonna probably rattle your brain. Do we need to start looking at Lawrence, because we're gonna be a low draft pick?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was about to literally interject and say that. So whether they have a low draft pick or not, everybody's looking at this the wrong way, and I'd love to help them see it differently. Everyone's saying that Lawrence is going to be the greatest quarterback, ever. I'm a huge ACC fan. I've been watching Clemson football for over a decade. I love the team. I've been watching Lawrence every game ever. No one's a bigger fan than me, but we know Sam Darnold's the guy. So I know Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be amazing. That's the point. You have that top pick or that second pick, and he's still there. Douglas will be able to trade with the team for the likes of which the NFL has never seen. He'll walk away with, I can't even imagine, he'll walk away with 4 years of first-round picks. Something ridiculous, because Lawrence has been built up into this cataclysm of greatness. But let's be honest, the NFL is a totally different game. How many top quarterbacks don't make it? They don't translate. They don't have what it takes. Mayfield was a top quarterback. Everyone's all excited. You use it to your advantage. And Douglas is a smart man. I'm telling you, the Jets have a top pick. They trade down and they get like, I can't even imagine, like I said, like 4 years of first. Like something that just has never happened ever.
So the first thing that I think about when you talk about a mega deal, blockbuster trade like that, I think about like Mike Ditka for Ricky Williams. I also think about what Fisher did with RG3 and was able to pick a lot of guys. I mean, the Rams basically built their whole defense
Point, yeah, exactly.
on getting
the point. Yeah.
On getting rid of, or not getting rid of, but trading away from RG3. I even thought when we took Darnold, because we had so many needs, we should have traded out of the third pick. And I'm not saying that against Darnold. We need so many things. Like for me, when your offensive line, your defensive line has cohesion, you got one or two players on defense, and you got one or two guys on offense, that's when you get the quarterback, because the quarterback pretty much is the last piece. Even though he's the most important piece, he's going to finish it off. Because if you get a great quarterback and you have no other positional players that are good, you're going to kill this kid. And, right, where we're at right now, and the psyche, can you imagine how he must feel? I seen that presser he was in. That kid looked depressed. He's a millionaire, and he looked depressed. I felt sad. I had to retweet. I think you put it out there, and I had to retweet that shit because I was like, this guy looks like he's going to go commit Harry Carey after this game. Poor dude is going to have a samurai sword in his gut. And so now we get to the one. I agree with you. I think you can go over and over and over. Number one, look at what Sam Bradford did. Tanked. I mean, he was phenomenal. Jamarcus Russell. Right.
The list just goes on.
Dude, it's on and on and on and on and on, right? Ever. Okay. So we really, really, really need to, for hopefully the smarter Jet fans. Look, I know he looks great. You know, it's almost like that. It's going to suck, this analogy I'm going to use, but it's almost like dating that hot girl that sucks in bed, right? It's like it looks great, but then it's not really advertised the way it should be. And for me, there's so many needs because I sent to you in the outline, even that draft that Darnold was in, I looked round from 1 to 32. Only like 4 guys were good. Everybody else sucked. It was Baker, it was Saquon, you can argue Darnold, and Jackson. Everyone else, and Fitzpatrick, I think that's his last name, the safety from the Steelers. 5 guys out of 32 players? Come on, bro. You trade back, you get all the first round picks, and where the meat and potatoes always is in the draft is the second and third and fourth rounds.
100%, dude. You couldn't say it better. If you go back in history, there's not a single draft ever that would shake out the way it went. There's guys that went the second round that would be a top pick, third round. So many guys, I can't even name them all. Stephon Diggs was a 5th round pick. Wow. There's so many. Adam Thielen was a late pick. The list just it goes on. Undrafted guys. Everyone swings based on college production, but you never know how it's going to translate. The NFL, I love college football. Big fan. But the NFL is a different animal. It's like watching 2 different games. I mean, if you tried to figure out the percentage of the players that translate from college to NFL, it's like 0.0000001%. It's like ridiculously low. So, yeah, I mean, for the record, I love Trevor Lawrence. I think he'll translate. But again, you mentioned it before. You trade down. Heck, forget 4 years of first-round picks. You could get a team second, their third, their fourth, their fifth. You could clean them out. Take everything.
A la Bill Belichick, who puts on the best freaking team every year because homeboy always has 10 to 15 picks that he could either trade up in the second round, trade up in the third round. I mean, I think that's an amazing, it's so fascinating that you're talking about guys like Diggs and Thielen going so deep in the draft. I mean, there's so many players out there, and whether it's some off the field something, or maybe they didn't like an injury he had in college and guys fall for whatever reason, there's a lot. I mean, look, to put it even into a perspective of the fantasy draft, how many guys in the first round ever pan out? You find your best players in that 14th round and that 10th round, and you're like, man, I got great value on this guy. I think that a lot of teams should start to think about that and start to utilize the later rounds, because for the most part, first round players are not automatic slam dunks, right? Like you could even argue that Lamar Jackson was a project, even though now the guy looks like the greatest Madden caricature you would ever want. It like hits every spin button and every hurdle button that you would want. But that, to me, that was an anomaly at 32.
Well, I agree. I'm so glad you covered that because it's true. You look at it, everyone that knows what they're talking about will tell you that a GM, they earn their money in the third to the fifth and sixth or so round. Because that first and second round, even pretty much the third round, give or take, everyone knows who those guys are. You could go on any website and read a million different things about everybody. Everyone knows about them. They've seen their footage, they've seen their production. It's the later guys, the guys that flashed a little bit, but you didn't see it, the guy that has the physical ability, but for some reason or another, he wasn't able to show it. There's so many factors, and I think Douglas is that guy. Everyone says that. We got to give him time. The Johnsons got to just take their hands off. If I think they do, I'm confident he would just get rid of Gase. I do. I mean, I could be wrong, but, you know, you just see it in the news. Chris Johnson talking about his brilliant mind, how brilliant he is. Everyone just wants to tell him to shut up because, you know, it's just not translating. And you're going to love this. I have a total theory on it. Look at Adam Gase. He's stubborn as a mule. He refuses to adjust, to admit when he's wrong. He pigeonholes players to how he wants to use them. He fights back. He's got an attitude. He's the freaking personification of the Johnsons. That's why they like him so much. They look at him and go, he's just like us. That's why they love him. They love him because they see themselves in him.
You know, that's actually a really fascinating point. I think that ownership and GMs need to start. I mean, I've always felt that smart people want to get around smarter people, and just because you disagree doesn't make you a bad person or doesn't make the relationship tough. I think that's how you grow. I think that's how you get better. I don't want to have a bunch of yes men on my squad, and then all of a sudden it's like every time I say something, they're like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm like, no, tell me why you don't believe. If you don't believe, like we need to really have a discussion of the mind so that we can really squeeze as much juice out of this situation as possible. And if that's true, I feel that's very dangerous, because if that's a fact, that means that Gates is not even on the hot seat.
That's the problem, and we just don't know. I mean, CJ has specifically said he's not on the hot seat. I mean, he issued no playoff mandate, which I could understand, but just in this situation, you have to call a spade a spade. You have to look at it for what it is. We go back, and like you mentioned it before, same thing with Cooter. Him and Gase were in Cooter's a perfect example. He was with the Colts when they had Peyton Manning. The offense was great. He was with Broncos.
Yeah, the greatest player arguably all time, and all of a sudden you're taking credit for coaching him.
All you have to do is step back and not get in the way, which I bet for them was very hard. But you just got to step back and not get in the way. If you look at teams where they've actually had a coach, like I said, Miami, Tannehill had his worst season regardless of the injury. The teams themselves weren't good. They were bottom of the barrel. All of a sudden, they draft Tua. They have promise. Things are changing. Things are heading in the right direction. And, I mean, everyone's saying it. Everyone just feels that way. And like I just can't say it better than right now would make the biggest statement, because the fans are upset. They're angry. Everyone feels that, like everyone's been saying, this is the worst team in the NFL. People said it about us before the season started, and we didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. People said we were the worst team, and I was like, we can't be that bad. But after watching the last two games, we are the worst team in the NFL. And if
we're
you
worse
want
than
to
Miami?
shake it up, we are the worst team, I feel, hands down, in the NFL. Because at least they have promise. They're going to play through at some point. They have something to look forward to. We have nothing to look forward to. What? Some guys are going to come back? Even when they played, they were stagnant. Nobody could do anything against anybody. You mentioned the Bills game. Gase is freaking pressured. The first thing he said when they asked him about the Bills, oh, well, we played a top defense. Yeah, that's going to happen. This top defense, especially this season when you have the toughest schedule. So what are you basically saying? We're going to lose against all the top defenses? That's half the freaking schedule. Like, it's just everything. Like, lately in the most recent one, he recently said, they asked him about how players are disgruntled. He said, well, nobody stepped up and came forward. What the hell are they going to do? Come forward on the field and call you out in front of everybody? Step in your office and tell you? You've already said you're stubborn and you're not going to change. It's just too much. It's just too much.
If I was reading the tea leaves, that shit with fucking Le'Veon Bell, when he sat him out of practice, it was already giving me those spider tingling senses. I was like, here we go. Here we go. You guys can't even get along. I mean, this is the one thing. We're in COVID. Half of America's on fire for one thing and half of America's on fire for another thing. I feel like if you have 53 guys and coaches, this is the time to be united above all times. And the fact that they can't even get on the right page is just mind blowing. I wanted to ask you, because you said you watched the whole game, and I watched 2 quarters, and then it got tough. And then I was playing fantasy, so I watched other games. But I went back and I watched them. Watching Darnold, it looked like he started favoring more of the side of the field. Have you seen any tendencies already that he's starting to create within the game because he doesn't feel comfortable?
See, I'm glad you brought that up, because half the people are putting it on Darnold. And forget this season. Take it out of your mind. He's never been that player. He's always been the guy to make the read, make the adjustment, hit anybody on the field, the open guy, make checkdowns if you give him the freaking ability to. Coaches pigeonhole players. If they put a certain play, they said it the best. Why didn't you audible? Because I wasn't allowed to. I couldn't do it. Players are forced to play based on the system. Anyone could look bad in any system. Tannehill, again, is a perfect example and succeed in another. I feel like, again, we're watching Darnold regress in front of our eyes. I personally feel like the organization has done him wrong. They've ruined him. They're going to bring in hopefully a new head coach, which will, again, put him in his new system in a contract year. I just hope he can show who he is, because he has the talent. And it's going to, we're the freaking Jets, man. He's going to go somewhere else, and he's going to be a legend. He's going to be the greatest quarterback to ever play, and we're going to say, well, we had him once, because that's just how it rolls. And I just don't want to see it. I refuse to accept Trevor. I refuse to accept the rest of it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, when you talk about consistency, they've been consistent on that, but that's not the way, to build an organization. Something that I thought, on top of everything else, to add to this shit sandwich, all of a sudden now the Patriots look competitive. All of a sudden, Josh Allen now, it looks like the real deal. Are we totally fucked, dude? Because there's no way we're going to beat the Patriots in New England. And now we can't even... Before I even get into that, I wanted to bring this up because you watched the game. I hope I'm saying it right. Did May give up on that run on Mostert? Because he looked like he put that shit in. He was in fourth gear and he clutched down to go into it. They gave up. The players are giving up on the field, and that's making me nervous now.
I feel like it's a tough situation. People feel like they're seeing that. It's tough. I mean, you got to look at it for face value. Chasing a guy like Moser. Moser's one of the fastest guys hands down in the league.
Sure,
I don't think most people can catch him. So maybe in May's mind, he just figured he got the touchdown. Like, this is over. There's no way I'm catching him. There's a lot of other factors to play into it, but it's more like you said, you see in the presser, Jordan Jenkins saying, cursing, like I've never seen it before. We're mad as effing hell. I can't take it anymore. They're mad. They're disgruntled. It's Williams. It's Gase. It's the whole thing. You just have to throw it in the garbage. And I hate to say it because, again, it's setting Darnold up for even more failure. But fans have said it to me, and I've accepted it. If you feel that this is really that bad, regardless of what could happen, you have to move on. You just have to. I mean, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, I thought that was crazy. I mean, if players now are getting really emotional after pressers, and I thought I seen him quit, because I would have kept running. But that's just me. And I get it. But now imagine you having to chase down Allen and now chase down Cam, and bro, we're gonna be worried about. I mean, at least we got a little bit of good news with Phillip Rivers. He doesn't run. So we could probably chase him down. He's amazing. And I mean, arguably, we might have fucking ruined the Niners season too, because without Garoppolo, they ain't doing jack shit. So, I mean, if we could play spoiler, I would never want to wish injuries on anybody, but I'm hoping that facing a non-mobile quarterback this up-and-coming weekend will be good. But I'm really concerned about the success that now Allen and Cam are going to have, because they look great. And the Patriots way again. I mean, it's so weird that 32 teams, I feel like out of 32 teams, maybe 5 teams try to, I'm not going to say copy the Patriots, but compete for real, and try to really make a run at it. I mean, why wouldn't you try to do exactly what the Pats do? And I get it. Not everybody's going to get Cam. Not everybody's going to get Tom Brady. But these guys get in players you've never heard of. players you've never heard of, and they produce. I mean, shucks, what was it? Because you probably know, what was it? The little guy that we had for like an hour. We cut him after Miami. We got him from Miami. We cut him. He was like on our practice squad. He goes to New England.
Not sure.
Oh my God,
Danny Woodhead?
Yeah, we had
not Danny Woodhead.
No, we had Woodhead.
That broke my heart.
Right, we had Woodhead on a practice squad. We let him go, and then all of a sudden he's a stud. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, where are we at? I mean, I don't even know. It seems like it's so bad, and teams are getting so much better. I mean, the only, I don't even know if there's a saving grace, but the fact that these teams didn't have as much training camp allows maybe the defense to have an upper hand, and they looked tenacious and full of energy on that front D line. They were coming after Garoppolo a lot. I mean, they just got hats on a lot of those big runs. That was great scheming by Shanahan. I couldn't believe it. It looked like when you were talking about maybe playing 2019 Madden, where you could just go right up the alley and just take it to the house on every play, because they had it down. They figured that out. But now we go to Indy. No Marlon, no Mac. Phillip Rivers doesn't run. Hopefully we could cause some problems.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there. I'll first start with the Rivers one, going back to the non-mobile quarterback. You saw it in the Allen game. He's an elusive guy. We got some pressure, but not enough. We saw guys like Jordan Jenkins, Jordan Willis, who was not active in week 2 after looking great in week 1, because that just makes sense. But they were getting pressure. Last week we saw some guys getting pressure. It's there, but even if it's a non-mobile quarterback like Phillip Rivers, he's a pocket general. He makes things happen. He's a great quarterback. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, it doesn't matter if he's mobile or not. He's going to make the throws. He's going to make the plays. You have to be able to get to the quarterback. That's textbook 101. The Jets haven't had an edge rusher in over a decade from Calvin Pace. Before that, John Abrams. They've had a decent line, but no one on the edge. I like Jordan Jenkins, but can't do it himself. He's been looking good so far this season. But yeah, can't get to the quarterback. Doesn't matter if they're mobile or not. You mentioned the division. I mentioned this last podcast. I was telling you all about it. Remember, I said don't sleep on Cam. That was my thing. Don't sleep on Cam, because he was a legend with the Panthers. He was great. First pick out of Auburn. That dude is legit. If he's healthy, he is a top quarterback in the NFL, hands down. And Belichick knew it. I've been saying for a while. It's just like with the Randy Moss. We joked about it too. I remember we joked about it. Why? He'll get Cam Newton, because it's too perfect. It makes sense. He knows what he's doing. He knows that he's the scheming. And that's the other question you mentioned. You see other teams with nobody. Everyone's hurt. They're still producing. Guys are stepping up. Guys you've never heard of. Because, again, it's like we talked about with Matt Castle. You see it everywhere. The system is there. The culture is there. They know how to perform. You've heard, they call it the Patriots Belichickian or whatever they call it. There's a move. There's a way things are done. They do things a certain way. They play at a certain level. It's an expectation that you need to get to. And I love Douglas for it, but I just don't love Gase for it. I love Douglas, again, interim guy this year. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, Douglas brings in his own guy next year, praying that the Johnsons don't micromanage him and force their own guy. But I'm hoping next year Douglas brings in his guy and the team goes from there.
So speaking about coaches, right, because I had this, and we touched on it briefly, I think our coaches, for the most part, has been defensive orientated. I mean, obviously we've had some great games with the Testaverdes of the world and the Chad Penningtons of the world, but a lot of those games I felt like were played from behind. So you could argue that a lot of those points and a lot of that airing out system was kind of garbage time. If we are, some teams, even teams in the NBA, are known for really good defense, and that's it. And they'll only score 85 points, but they're going to keep you at 80. Good luck trying to score. Should we start? And I know this is weird because you look at the progression of how the quarterback doesn't get hit as much, gets every call in the book, with guys like, Aaron Rodgers, even Brady, playing in the spread. Should we maybe get away from that and maybe get back to being a strongly defensive team, run the rock, and then if we can maybe, and I'm not saying that we're moving on down mentally, but we need to find what our system is. I feel like we don't. One year we get a coach and it's a defensive system. The next year we get an offensive defense. It's like, dude, figure out what we are and let's just stick with that.
I mean, without question, our best years have been with defensive guys defensive center to the ball. For the longest time, as long as I can remember, the mantra of the NFL was defenses win championships. But I have to say, I have to go against it. It's not the case anymore. Things have changed. We look at teams like, hey, you want to have a great defense, and just that, you can be the 49ers. You can be a team that takes you as far as the Super Bowl. But what happens? A great quarterback wins. The Patrick Mahomeses of the day step in, step up when it matters, and win. We hate Brady so much because he did it. Manning did it. The great quarterback is always going to be the one. It used to be back in the day you needed defense, and you still do. Defenses can win championships, but the quarterback is the position. They proved it this year with paying Mahomes more money than any human being I think has ever made in the history of the world playing sports. It's ridiculous. Everything revolves around that quarterback. And again, the Super Bowl says that. You can have the greatest defense in the world, which arguably the 49ers had, but Garoppolo made mistakes. The great quarterback will always win. The better quarterback will always prevail because he'll make that play. We always said it about Brady, right? We'd watch the Jets with Pennington, with Testaverde, have a great game. They're up by a touchdown, but wait, there's 2 minutes left on the clock, and Brady's getting the ball. We always said that. It's quarterbacks now. We don't want to admit it. I love defenses, but that's the name of the game now. It's the quarterback.
I should have never been a fan of that Trent Dilfer Baltimore Ravens team because I feel like, that's all we got to do, bro. Just get like a really crazy linebacker, get an amazing safety, just get a running back, and then you can just plug in anybody. You can get the janitor. You can get the Jets janitor to play quarterback as long as you don't turn the ball over. I just feel that if that's the case, I'm hoping Darnold is the guy. But if we move off of him, then we need to start taking maybe a money ball approach to how we win this game in the sense of defense and running backs. And then if we could just wait and get the guys, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, Cam sound this deal, but if they play above 500, Cam is going to be behind center for the Pats for a minute. Allen ain't going nowhere. You got Tua coming up. We're going to be in trouble. We got to start building now teams to beat those guys, right? Because that's the only way we're going to at least even get into the dance. So, I mean, is it going to be 58-48 now because everybody's just going to be throwing the rock? Should we look at things differently? I mean, I really want Le'Veon Bell to be our savior because I think that he was, like you said, he had some crazy numbers. When you're talking about all-time greats, I mean, his yards per carry were crazy. He was doing phenomenal things. But whether it's COVID, whether it's just, running backs don't last long in the NFL, right? Like after 5 years, you start to break down. You can't take fucking.
It's the new game.
Yeah, you can't. If you run the rock 30 times and you're getting tackled by big dudes, your shit's gonna break. It's just the human body could only be pushed, so far. Not everybody's Adrian Peterson, and so I just hope that it's like now we get the new hope. It's like a Star Wars reference. I hope that we don't kill Darnold's psyche too much, and I hope Douglas goes in there and finds some gems in the 3rd or 4th round, and maybe the GM, it would be great. Listen, at this point, I would even take an OBJ. I don't even need Allen. I know that that's what everybody wants, but we need somebody to stretch the field to take pressure off this kid.
I mean, that was supposed to be Mims. Mims is going to be the guy. I want to let everybody know that's listening, Mims will be the guy. It's ridiculous. He hurts one hamstring. He gets healthy. He hurts the other hamstring. The guy's got to be walking on knees on the field. It's ridiculous. So, again, this crazy year, Mims is going to be the guy. He's going to build a team around him. Next year, there's going to be some free agent receivers. Maybe Juju hits free agency. Douglas people question him. He will spend the money if he sees the value. Same thing he does with picks. He will trade if he sees the value. He's smart. He knows what he's doing. We just got to, I hate to say trust the process. With Gase, I would say the opposite in every way. I would say burn it to the ground. But with Douglas, trust his process. Because I've watched what he has to do, and it's damn impressive. And he's an Ozzie Newsome guy, and I feel like that's enough said. Ozzie Newsome is a freaking legend. Anyone coming from an Ozzie Newsome is just, he's all right by me.
I agree, because Newsome was, you could argue that Newsome is a Bill Belichick pupil.
You can argue better
You know,
when it comes to drafting.
right, but that's what I was going to say. That was my next point. We talked about the Ravens. He built phenomenal teams. He's had 2 championship teams under his belt. The player after player. I mean, this guy just gets guys that. I mean, I think Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were like 6th and 5th rounders. Like the dude is amazing. So if Douglas is coming from that, then I'm excited. Then I do believe, and I really hope that. I mean, shucks, are we at the point already? It's only week 3. Are we throwing away the season and starting to look at the draft?
That's why I say go with an interim, man. Shake it up. For that reason I said before, everyone talks about Williams and his great interim season. Look at everybody. I'm telling you, I go back as far as you want. The interim always has more success than the predecessor, and it's just because of the preparation. Teams are ready for one team, for one system, for the way things work. If you shake it up on them, they make mistakes. They miss tackles. They don't know what's coming. They don't see the play. They don't see the audible. They got to do it. Whoever it is, there's my guys that I want in. There's my guys that I want out. But honestly, right now, just shake it up. Period.
So check it out, bro. I'm gonna argue this. First of all, leave Gase in there. We go fucking undefeated, and we get the number 1 pick overall, and then we trade Lawrence for the whole house. Get like 17 first rounders, 14 second rounders.
Okay.
Like because at this point, this is one of the things that are always getting me upset about the Jets. It's like we're always that place where we don't land the first round. The first overall pick, because I was happy that Darnold, fell to us, because you could argue that the Giants should have took Darnold, right? But they took Saquon instead, which I found interesting. But now all of that's changed. We need the overall pick. That way we can have leverage. No one's really gonna be chomping at the bit for the third round, for the third overall pick. So it's either fire Gase and listen, change it up, and then we'll be happy with some, middle tier draft pick, and then we'll go for free agency, because we still got a lot of money, and a lot of guys are coming off the cap, and CJ Mosley's coming back next year, and who knows, we could maybe trade Le'Veon Bell for some money. So we don't know. There could be optimism in that department. But if we're gonna keep with Gase, let's play for Lawrence, and let's trade the fuck out of that shit.
I want to take you that situation and raise you something that you never want to hear. You don't even want to think about, but it's true. How many guys have we seen that don't want to play for certain organizations because of the owners, because of the stigma, because of the way they run their operations? Look at Eli.
Look at Andrew Luck. Right, the Chargers. Chargers, he said, get me the fuck out of here now.
Yeah. He was flat out, you look at Eli, flat out drafted by the Chargers. Yeah.
Said bye.
He said, nope, that's not happening. He told his father to make that happen. I just look at that. You remember 2 seasons ago, I can't remember the center we were trying to get. He was a top center, but I remember the guy that we couldn't get because it haunts the hell out of me, Anthony Barr. He used the Jets.
I was so pissed. Fuck that guy.
Leverage. That's the point. You see that now. But players, they don't want to play for organizations like the Browns. They don't want to play for organizations with losing cultures, with bad owners.
Yes.
You can't blame Lawrence.
I agree.
He's going to go look at. He's going to go back and look at Sanchez. Top pick. They put nothing around him.
100%.
Darnold. He doesn't want to do
That's
it.
an amazing
right
point.
Now, what could happen if we have the first pick and Lawrence turns around and says, "I don't want to play for that team," and we're the San Diego Chargers and it's Eli Manning? That could happen.
Wow.
And you want to smack in the face?
That would be
You went 0-16. That's why I said you don't want to think about it. You went 0-16, and then that happened. Then the guy says, look at Peyton. Everyone talks about Keyshawn Johnson in the 98 draft. You know what that reminds me of? The fact that Peyton didn't want to play for the Jets. He was supposed to be the top pick the year before. He looked at the Jets. The Jets have the first overall pick. I think I'm going to go back to college for one more year. And he went back to Tennessee, and he made sure the Jets couldn't get him. And it's just, it's the dysfunction, man. I'm telling you, it's never going to change until the top changes. And I'm getting angry, man.
No, I feel you, dude. I feel you. I'm mad. I can't believe the Jets are like bundled with the Browns and the Jags, and like these teams that are culturally dysfunctional and are known for historically losing all the time, and there's meddling from the top down, and it's just terrible stuff. And it sucks because I think that for the most part everybody that wears that white and green is passionate and loves everything about it, but we just don't get the respect from the organization to get the right guys. I mean, think about this. I can see you too. Fucking Bill Belichick was like, get me the fuck out of here too. He was in the building and he was like, you know what? I'm out. I can't handle this shit.
It's 100% correct. Now we look at that season, and everyone makes all these what ifs, and it's crazy to think about. It is interesting because if Vinny Testaverde didn't get hurt that year, maybe the Jets have a great year. Maybe Parcells decides to stay on, or maybe Belichick decides to stay on. The only difference, and the most important thing, is the Patriots don't draft Tom Brady that year, and he doesn't become a Patriot. There's so many what ifs. And you look at with the Jets, we can't look too much in the past. You mentioned it before with the bleeding green and white. I said it 1,000 times. I'll say it every time. The number one word that comes to my mind when I think of Jet fans is resilient. Resiliency. We've watched it all. We've seen everything, and you see it with other teams like the guys that are Jets and Mets. But thankfully, I'm a Yankee fan. It's my one silver lining in life.
Me too, bro.
there's these teams. They just rip your heart out year after year, and you hope things will get better, and then it does, and then it gets worse, and then it does, and then it gets worse, and then it stays bad for a really long time. Oh man, it's tough. Like I said, Douglas is the one bright spot I am excited about. I just want the Johnsons to shut up, stop talking about Gase. The only thing I want them to say is, we believe in Joe Douglas. We think he's the man. He has 100% control of this team, and he can do whatever he wants from this point forward. You will never see us again.
Bro, I love it. We're going to dip out, but I wanted to bring this up. Maybe it's time to call up Parcells. Be like, check it out, bro. Are you hitting the greens? We need you to be an advisor here and talk to these two dudes.
How old is he now?
I don't even know, bro. But that guy has had success.
I don't know,
bro. I mean, look, I don't even think he was the GM in Miami. He turned that organization around. He turns organizations around, bro. Maybe we need to get him back on the horn. I mean, shit. John Madden looks like he's still available. we need to get somebody.
He's sitting on that Madden money. He's happy.
Well,
I remember. If you want a cool story, I remember a guy once. He actually met a head designer for. It was a friend of mine for Madden because he was a bigger gamer than me. He had these ideas for things they could do. This was going back like Madden 07, 06, something like that. He got to this. He was at one of the headquarters. I forgot the whole exact story, but I remember a bus pulls up, and the guy tells him to go on with him. He goes on the bus. It was like he said. It was like a party bus. But every 5 inches was a TV, different things, different systems. It looked like a billionaire's bus. Man stands up. It's John Madden himself. It's just the dude's a legend. The dude is loaded. It is amazing. I mean, the guy he's doing very well for himself. His family is pretty.
For sure. Well, thanks so much, Harrison, for coming on. We're going to have you on back next week. We're going to get this Jets roundtable on. I'm thinking about calling it Jets Island, and we'll just sit here and talk everything Jets and get everything aired out as much as we can. So thank you so much for taking time and coming on the show, bro.
It was my absolute pleasure. I love being here. I love talking about the Jets and everything that goes with them.
Plug in the site so we can read your stuff and follow you on Twitter.
Definitely. So I just started writing again on my own. I got my own site. Check it out. Write great stuff about the Jets. Talked about the dysfunctional owners, the offensive line, trading for Allen Robinson. I talked about what you mentioned earlier with the players, how it affects them. Beautiful title. How mediocrity affects morale. Come check it out. The name of my company is Take Flight Media. The website is takeflightmedia.org. And if you want, find me on Twitter. I'm at NYJetsTF Media. Please come by. Love to have you.
For sure. Well, I'm going to keep following you and retweeting everything you tweeting and try to keep up our morale, at least from the sidelines, because, hey, if we can't win, at least we could be a strong community.
I 100% agree. That's always how we've been. We always stand together. You look at Jets Twitter, they're mad as hell, but they're always unified.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you coming out. Peace out.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to the show. Stay safe, stay healthy.